Coming up on the news today then, Manchester United players are starting to believe that Erik Ten Hag will be sacked at the end of this season. Also, a potential move for Victor Osimhen is in the offing for Manchester United. And finally, Bruno Fernandes speaks out about United's top 4 chances this season. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe. We are here at a sunny and actually wind-free, rain-free, sleet-free Old Trafford today. The weather's actually quite pleasant, even though it's a little bit chilly. And we've got loads to talk about today. I'm going to start with this story from Bruno Fernandes. Do get your thoughts on all of these stories in the comments below. He has been speaking after the Manchester City game, obviously that defeat at the Etihad on Sunday, and he has admitted it is going to be very, very difficult for Man United to get top 4. He said we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to get that 4th place, that Champions League spot. He knows, and he said that next week all the United fans will be out again at Old Trafford. They'll be here every single time there's a game. They'll be cheering the team on, and he wants the team to do everything they possibly can to win as many games as possible to get top 4. And obviously, in a sense, these comments are sort of to be expected. You expect your captain to want to win every week. You expect him to try and turn up and play as hard as possible. And I think we do see that from Bruno Fernandes. And sometimes that energy and work rate looks sort of chaotic at times, doesn't it, from Bruno? You watch him and you never question his desire, but sometimes you question almost his sort of how sensible that desire is being, or how sensibly that desire is being deployed. He looks a bit of a headless chicken at times, and I think that some of that comes from his own frustration at his teammates and what United are doing. Obviously, it makes sense that they're going to try and win every game. He couldn't possibly come out and say, you know what, after that City game, I'll be honest, top 4's done, and I'm done, and he just walks out and never plays for United again. That isn't going to happen. But I do think as well that I like that we're still seeing these messages from Bruno, and he is the club captain. I know that people say, oh, do you talking on the pitch? But as the captain of the team, you have a sort of, not necessarily I don't want to say it's a duty to come out and say these things after a game, but you are one of the representatives that speaks to the fans, that speaks and is a sort of a link between the players, and you're there to do a little bit more than the rest in terms of these kind of things. So Bruno Fernandes coming out, not giving up on top 4. I think it's nice to see. And this was always my worry with United. We had this good run of form, didn't we, that started sort of mid-January, extended till about 2 weeks ago, where United I think had won, it was 7 of the last 9 games. But I always said, and I think it was pretty clear to see, Villa and Tottenham had a bit of a dip in form. We'd had a massive upturn in form. Could that last till the end of the season? And we're seeing now, obviously, it couldn't last till the end of the season, and that is the issue with United. Our form and Villa and Tottenham's bad form sort of coincided, and even at the end of those, selections of form, we hadn't caught them up. We were always going to dip off a little bit, and we were still 5 points off them. So it was always going to be a tough ask after what we saw before Christmas. So, Bruno Fernandes coming out and saying that we want to keep fighting for top 4. It's good to hear. We'll have to see how it goes on the pitch, but I think a lot of us know 11 points off 4th. This is going to be very, very, very difficult. Let's move on to our next story then, and this is a big one coming out of the Daily Mail. It's Chris Wheeler, who's been on the channel before, talking about players expecting Erik Ten Hag to be sacked. Now, this is a long sort of piece, and he talks about how the players, and he emphasises very early on in the article that the players are still backing Ten Hag. The players still like and support Ten Hag, but they fear that he will be sacked as Ineos come in and try to implement their own strategies, bring in their own people at Old Trafford. And obviously that's not just Ineos want a new manager because it's Ineos. It's a reflection of the performances. It's a reflection of the results. The fact, like I just mentioned, United are 11 points off 4th isn't good enough. No United fan, no United player, no United bosses or CEOs, except maybe the Glazers, but even they don't accept those sorts of finishes and results. So when you look at this article, you look at the headline, United players expect Ten Hag to be sacked, and then when you actually read it, it isn't quite as inflammatory as it maybe initially seems, because we've talked about this on the podcast, we've talked about this on the news, Jay's mentioned this on the news, stood right here. No one knows whether Ten Hag is going to be here next season, and unfortunately, based on the fact that we have got new owners, we've seen what happened at Chelsea in the past, we've seen what happened with Chelsea with Todd Boehly. I was talking about Abramovich there initially. When new owners come in, they want to bring in their own style, their own structure, their own plans, and part of that is the manager. When you pair that with the fact that the results have been so bad this season, it is understandable why the players are starting to think, you know what, he's probably not going to be here next season. He might well get sacked at the end of this year or some point between now and the end of the season. Because we all think the same as fans as well. We know deep down, regardless of whether you want Ten Hag to stay, you want Ten Hag to go, you know there's a good chance that he might leave this season. And players are human beings as well who see things, they know more than us as well about what is going on at Manchester United. If they're starting to think that, then that to me makes sense. It's a sad situation, it's a sad realisation. The one thing we can't allow is for that tip over between the players going, you know what, if we keep playing like this, he's going to go, which is obvious, to actually, if we keep playing like this, we can get rid of him. That's the thing I think that United fans have been left with a sort of sour taste in the mouth in the last few seasons. We felt that under Solskjaer, or personally I felt under Solskjaer, there were times where players went, you know what, we can get rid of him, rather than going, I'm worried he's going to get sacked. And that's when it turns into, you see these performances where the players aren't putting the effort in. You see these performances where, as fans, you just immediately can smell they aren't doing this, they aren't trying anymore. And I don't think we've seen that yet under Ten Hag. I know there's been issues and there's been personnel, and at times there have been effort-related issues from certain people, but I don't think as a team and as a club they've downed tools, and they can't afford to do that, because I think a lot of the players are on their last chance with a lot of fans. Some players, if they down tools again, or if they look like they aren't going to be up for it and they don't want to fight for the manager, I think a lot of fans will turn their back on some of these players. So as much as anything, for self-preservation reasons, as well as trying to save the manager's job, the players need to put everything in, week out between now and the end of the season. And going back to the first story, Bruno Fernandes saying what he's saying, I trust him to be someone that is leading that effort. Moving on to our next story then, and this is coming out of The Independent, and this is that Manchester United are targeting Victor Osimhen this summer. Now, let's first of all start by saying that this is from Miguel Delaney, and if you follow him on social media, if you know much about him, if you follow him over the last few years, you will know that this should be taken with a little pinch of salt. His track record is, let's say, sort of shaky, okay? But it is in The Independent, and it is a story a lot of people are going to read, so here's my take on it. They're talking about PSG and United being the two teams after him. PSG makes total sense. They're getting rid of Mbappe. He's going to Real Madrid. They need not just a big player and someone to score goals, but they need a marquee signing. That is a club that sort of emphasises big players, big money, big signings, and I think Victor Osimhen would make a lot of sense for them. Manchester United, on the other hand, have got Rasmus Højlund, who I think is one of the most promising young strikers in Europe, and then you're going to replace him or sort of partner him with someone that's going to cost you about 100 to 130 million euros, that kind of region for Victor Osimhen, who's only, I think, 3 years older than Rasmus Højlund. You are essentially replacing Rasmus Højlund a season after signing him, a season after he's got 13 goals so far for Manchester United. He's scored 6 in his last games in the league for Manchester United as well. I don't think that's a good idea, and I don't think it's a likely idea either. So I'm not saying this won't happen because I am not in the sort of inner workings, and we don't really know what Ineos are yet in terms of a transfer market. We know what Ed Woodward was, we know what Man United have been over the last decade. We don't really know what Ineos' strategy is going to be. Will they want to come out and sort of shatter that kind of transfer record with a huge signing like Victor Osimhen, or will they say, actually, Rasmus Højlund's one of the few bright sparks this season, let's try and nurture him with maybe someone slightly later on in their career, or even someone slightly younger and more unproven than Rasmus Højlund has been for a cheaper fee. We'll have to wait and see, but I can't imagine Victor Osimhen coming to Manchester United this summer. But, you know, I'm not running the club. I don't know. I don't make these decisions. Get your thoughts in the comments below. Do you see this as a possibility, or is it just a way where PSG are probably linked with Osimhen because, you know, that makes sense, and they just want to tie United's name in as well? That's going to be all from me this morning. Get your thoughts in on all these stories on the comments below. It is a sort of stressful time as United fans, isn't it? And we've faced a lot of these over the last 10 years. But we do look as though we've got another manager's career on a sort of coin flip at the moment for Manchester United. I can't decide whether I think he's going to stay or go, but it's just a horrible situation to be in, isn't it? That's going to be all from me. This has been the news here at Old Trafford this morning. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you in a bit.